And our speaker today is Rob Delane, who's the Director General of Agriculture and Food in Western Australia. He's been Director General since November 2009. During 2008-2009 he was Deputy Secretary Biosecurity Services Group with the Commonwealth DAF, so he's had responsibilities at both the Commonwealth and the state level. He's a keen promoter of regional, state, national and international cooperative initiatives and government industry partnerships to deliver both innovative outcomes and apply innovation to more efficiently and effectively deliver services and outcomes. Rob holds a Master of Science in Agriculture and a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. He's a graduate member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and a member of the Institute of Public Administration Australia. In 2007, Rob received a Public Service Medal for outstanding service to the agricultural industries and community of Western Australia. So please welcome Rob Delane.
Thanks very much, Mick, for that kind introduction and for the opportunity. And thanks to all the other speakers. Look, when you leave Western Australia to come to the rest of Australia, when you leave Paradise and Asia's time zone to travel across our great nation, you want to make a point. I want to give you something to remember. So I'm going to make it my job to make sure that you're awake in the run-up to afternoon tea. But you won't hear from me a parochial WA view. You'll hear a passionate national and business-focused view. A national RD&E strategy, is it desirable and or achievable? For me, that's really easy to answer. Yes and yes. Or unless you want continued fragmentation, marginal relevance, major gaps, sustained uncertainty. The National RD&E framework, the train has left the station. The challenge is for us to optimise the journey, to plan whatever comes after that, and for those who don't want to be part of that, I encourage you just to hang on real tight. It's really important that we look forward here. There is no going back. Our industry, we've heard a lot of, our R&D fraternity, is in a period of sustained and sometimes pretty rapid and harsh transformation. And as a CEO, when I reflect back on the books I've read about organisational change and sectoral change and all that sort of stuff, the thing that's usually concluded out of all major transformational organisational change programs is that the only thing they did wrong is they didn't do enough, fast enough and go far enough. Now that might be very scary for a lot of people, but I think the most likely mistake we'll make here in the R&D fraternity and in fact in the sector more generally is that we are not progressive enough and don't pursue the future hard enough and fast enough. And that's a challenge in a sector where we spend a lot of time hankering about the past. We're often in denial about the fine details of the present reality. And as a result, we forego some of the opportunities of the future. So our behaviour pattern based on history is that we're more likely to take more small incremental steps from the past rather than throw the flag out to 2025 or 2020 or even just as far as 2015 and then drive very hard at that point. Because of course our world is moving while we're doing that. So even to focus on what seems believable for all of us, 2020, by the time we get to 2020 the operating environment will already be very, very different. So I'm going to give a few points about the context for R&D just to make sure that people got the message, a bit about the RD&E framework, probably to complement the others, and then a bit where to from now. One of the things we do in agriculture, I've heard it many, many times, we talk about how we punch above our weight, how we like to think of ourselves as a big dog when we're really just a small dog. We only do a tiny fraction of the world's R&D in all economic sectors, including agriculture and food. In fact, there are single companies in the world that have got much bigger R&D departments than my whole department, which is 1,300 people. There are plenty of companies in the world, US, China, other countries, global companies, that are as big or bigger than Australian agriculture. Bigger than Australian agriculture. I went to a pork company in China just a couple of weeks ago, about the same size, just in pork, one company, the same size as Australian agriculture. They've got a pretty big R&D department too. Why do I say that? Why is that important? Well, look at the changes that are going on in Australian industry. In Australian grains, huge global companies are already very heavily involved domestically. They do a lot of the grain trading around the world, Australian grain, in sugar, in other sectors as well. These are big companies. Our world is changing, perhaps much more than we're really prepared to talk about. So, if that's the sort of scale of change that is increasingly prevalent, is it tenable that we would continue to operate in a highly fragmented, small team, even personalised or highly competitive organisational way, rather than a Team Australia way, trying to help all Australian producers and others involved in the sector to be more productive, to be more profitable, so that they can compete in a very challenging domestic environment and very challenging international environment. If we can't do that, if we can't add that value, then the R&D fraternity will continue on its downward slide. This is not my son's golf, but it looks a bit like it. I think we had a comment earlier today about the farmers accessing technology. I use the example, but just as I helped my son fix his leaking sunroof in his VW Golf in the driveway of my house using an iPad and accessing 14 YouTube clips that showed me and therefore him exactly what to do to that. A farmer could be sitting on his tractor controlled by GPS with his tablet, studying the air seeder behind him using the manufacturer's specs and farmer video clips of how to actually optimise the performance of that machine. That's the world that we live in, and that's just today. We live in a Google and a Bing and a YouTube world today. But even by 2020, it's going to be whatever comes next. So, are we going fast enough? Probably we are not. So, our producers and their leaders say they want more R&D. Even if they're going broke, in my experience, farmers want more R&D, even stuff that won't deliver a result for 20 years. What they really want is a pipeline of innovation that can deliver short-term, medium-term, long-term benefits to their business. Innovation is just any change that adds value. R&D is a strategy that creates potential innovation but doesn't guarantee it. So if a farm business or another business in the agri-food sector wants innovation, do they need to get it from Australian R&D? Well, no, they don't, because if you look at most of the costs that are in a farm budget, then most of the technology actually comes from around the world. Machinery, IT, fertilisers, chemicals, fuel, and quite a few other things. So there are certain things in R&D and innovation that are really important from Australia, but we're kidding ourselves if we think that we do it all, or if we think that farmers and other business people and their advisors are only going to look within Australia. So as a CEO, I'm increasingly pressed to take this sort of approach, which is to understand what's going on in industry, what innovation would be beneficial to industry, either to address a problem or capture an opportunity. So what is needed? Which will make a difference to a business, therefore to a sector, therefore to the economy. The next question, well, has it already been done? Can someone get on their tablet or on the phone or go overseas or Google it and actually find that innovation, or just go to the shop and ask someone to find it for them, or even eBay it? So if the innovation is there, the question is, how can we facilitate access? How can we facilitate that solution? And in fact, is invention via R&D actually required? But even if we reach the conclusion that invention and therefore R&D is required, who is actually best placed to undertake that invention work? Is it my department, a Perth-based university, Australian-based organisation, or Australian organisation at all? Increasingly, people like me, and I think if my colleagues from around the nation gave this talk, it will be different, but there'll be a certain sameness about it. They'll be saying increasingly we're starting from a different place and the right place in our roles. In the old days, we would start from we're an R&D organisation, we've got a lot of people, we need more money to do what we do. And we come up with some really good ideas in the process. Increasingly, it's the other way around. What is the innovation that's needed? That's a policy sort of role. How should it be funded, by whom, and should we in fact fund it at all or just facilitate it? That's a funding role. And then who should provide it? That's a delivery role. It is a very different approach to life from what we've had before. But if we in the R&D and E fraternity don't work out how to deliver value into this system for businesses who create jobs and create exports and do all the things that make our economy work and our nation strong, then we will not have the relevance, the credibility, the currency that is necessary for us to continue doing what we want to do. So, in a sense, it's a bit like customer focus. It's actually not all about R&D people, it's all about the people who benefit from it. And the world is even more complex and challenging. This is work from Angus Taylor and Port Jackson Partners did a fantastic report for ANZ, and if you haven't read it, I suggest you do. Just Google ANZ greener pastures, because this work, and without buttering them up too much, some of the AFI work is the best commentary around about how our sector more broadly needs to plan its way forward. But Angus used what he calls the 6 cylinders. He must have driven an old Valiant or something, I think, but he talks about 6 major changes that need to occur in the agricultural sector in Australia and New Zealand for it to really crank up the capacity that it needs to have. It's going to take a major play in the Asian century, or in what some of us call the dining boom. There's a couple of them down the bottom that we're spending a lot of time talking about. Targeted R&D, effective adoption of tailored knowledge. But there's 4 others as well, which require a different sort of research. They require policy and economic and management research, market research, so that they can be addressed. Because Angus's Valiant, working on just 2 brilliant cylinders, firing down the bottom, is probably not going to go very far. Now, Angus, in his work, concluded the national R&D programs need more focus and coordination to drive long-term growth, particularly by identifying and pursuing the highest potential opportunities. He talked about more focus and coordination. He didn't talk about more dollars. So here we are, we've talked about all of the challenges in the R&D, which is particularly focused in the production area. We're actually not talking about addressing some of the biggest impediments to getting a return on that R&D, even if it was 100% adopted in the first year. So people like me and ministers and lots of others are now looking at what are the greatest impediments to business success and supply chain success in each of the sectors, and tackling those areas, which sometimes means moving resources out of R&D so that we can do that, which will improve the return we get on R&D. I think you follow the bouncing ball. It's for a state agency, increasingly I think for DAF as well, it's about optimising our role so that we can optimise the system. My colleagues already covered quite a lot about pressures on the R&D and E environment. There is a lot of pressure. When you combine it, my estimate is over the last 5 years or so, there's probably close to 3,000 people who work for primary industries agencies, Commonwealth and states, that don't exist in those agencies anymore. That's just over 5 years. There's probably a fair bit of stuff that's not getting done. At the same time, our sector's changed a lot, and it's very strongly now gone through, in most sectors, through the 80-20 rule, now moving to more extreme positions. So there's a lot of change, a lot of pressure being wreaked within the R&D system, but there's also some pretty big pressure being wreaked within the sector that we're all here for. So, but RD&E in primary industries is central to increasing productivity, profitability, ensuring sustainability. So is it just likely that we can continue to afford a fragmented and duplicative RD&E system if we're going to make the optimal contribution to that? Probably not. We are probably going to need and continue to need significant, if not disruptive innovations within the innovation system itself so that we can actually be contemporary as our industry faces the challenges as it goes forward. In simple summary, the future is not the past. An R&D&E framework initiated in 2005, formally established in 2009, is a very important step towards the future. But it's only the short-term future, and I suspect that in a lot of your working lives, Ministerial Council will consign it to the past and replace it with something better for that time. I'm not going to go over this in any detail, Matt and others have covered this, but just to make a couple of points. Fundamentally, the RD&E framework was based on sectoral and cross-sectoral strategies, and Matthew ran us through that. We all took leads, co-leads with R&D corporations, and my department has had a lead, co-lead with grains and with wool. Other key feature of the framework, which is not talked about quite so much, is that the approach to take a national approach to research, in other words, it could pretty much be done anywhere in Australia, a regional approach to D, but then a very local approach to E, would help drive that change. Well, it did, but what we found in the early days was that there was a great over-description of what we're all capable of and what we're all doing, and so we were saying that we were really clever in lots of things, and in fact we all wanted to be major in this and major in that, and if we couldn't be major, we'd begrudgingly be support, but we wouldn't accept that we really didn't have much capacity and we really just wanted to hook up with the other guys. That's a fact. That's the way it was. I think we've now come to a realisation that that major support link test of whether we're really going to be in R, whether we're going to be in D, or whether we're going to just play some role in E, that's changed a lot, and we've got to a much more realistic situation. So, a couple of quick examples of how the benefits are being realised, and these have been through as well. But there have been really beneficial changes. The state boundaries haven't quite gone, but they've gone a lot. R&D corporations have played varying roles, states have played varying roles, but there has been fantastic progress, and GRDC has been a brilliant partner with us and others in developing and implementing the National Grains R&D strategy. One of the really important things, which people see as a negative, I see as a great positive, is the RD&E framework has allowed a safe descent while we've all lost about 3,000 people between us. We have not messed up too much in all of that rationalisation. We have not all got out of the same thing and a heap of us stayed in the same thing when it didn't make any sense. Mostly there has been a safe settling across the nation which has delivered fantastic short-term benefits, and everyone will be grateful for the long term. Just a quick couple of examples. AGEC is a function here for the Australian Export Grains Innovation Centre. This is an internationally focused national centre based in Perth, which has been established as a not-for-profit company with the aim of it being an ongoing concern. Not just an ephemeral CRC or a 5-year contract or whatever. GRDC and DAFWA, 50-50 partners, a not-for-profit company, $20 million on the table over 5 years, 3-year review, all intentions to go for another 5 years and beyond, to establish a national capability to help Australian grain sectors, companies exporting, businesses relying on them, be more successful in international markets. It's a national facility. Another national facility which has been mentioned earlier today, the Australian Grains Genebank in Victoria, where GRDC and the Victorian Department have actually finally solved a problem that too many of us have wrestled with for too long, what to do with the bits of genetic resources we had scattered all over Australia. One of the things the R&D framework has enabled R&D corporations to do, and congratulations for GRDC to really grabbing hold of this, is to actually give them a framework and a licence to start to do things like support one important national capability in one region and another one in another. And GRDC has done it in Perth, it's done it in Horsham, it's done it in Narrabri, doing it in Adelaide and Melbourne and in other areas as well. So when you put a national genes bank together with a rationalised crop breeding sector established on commercial grounds, with a wheat breeders alliance and with a pre-breeding alliance that helps marshal all of the resources in a national way, you actually start to get an integrated approach which was not there 5 years ago. Quickly on pork, this is really just a rationalisation of where we really were setting ourselves for major problems nationally. There were 18 facilities doing pork research, subject to all of the animal welfare risks and issues that go around that. But only 8 of them were really suitable for a world-class national research capability. That has been rationalised. So there's been a whole lot of poor assets cast aside, but we have a much better national result. We happen to have one of those facilities for now and are making a contribution to a pork sector, most of which doesn't exist in WA. Another one, VAS Research Station. We used to do a lot of work on VAS, but we still lost money. What we've been able to do is move out of it because we now are nationally connected. And in fact, every state that I know of has had to and has moved out of lazy assets scattered around, dragging our organisations down and dragging us to the past. That's a good thing that we've been able to do that, even though the lobby sector would say, oh, we've all declined and states have got out of this and out of that. So to move quickly to wrap up, we started out with national research, regional development, local extension. I'm not sure now that it was relevant then. It's most certainly not relevant now. We are almost certainly already in an era of international and national R, of international, national and regional D, of international, national, regional and local E. Really? Maybe Rob smoked something in afternoon tea time. It's easy to grasp these things for something like barley genetic improvement. This photo is taken in Tibet. Accessing genetic material out of Tibet and the Middle East, the 2 genetic centres of origin, seems easy. But then bring it together with some of the best minds in the world, with some of the best technology in the world, applying it through some of the best breeding companies in the world, through national collaboration across Australia and then with China, is the only way to get the best appropriate genetics to Australian barley producers and maltsters and exporters as quickly as possible. You have to have an international view and you have to have really strong national collaboration. E-extension was mentioned. US Department of Agriculture is driving this with its partners in the US. There are 73 learning networks, 74 universities involved, US Department of Agriculture very heavily involved. This is the future. It's the Google, Bing, iPad world. And Victorians and GRDC, working with others, as Matthew mentioned, are trialling this, initially in grains and initially in one area of grains. There is zero doubt in my mind that we will move strongly to this quickly and across Australia, and probably only money and bravery will limit that. Certainly with GRDC, we're setting ourselves to make some major changes in WA. So, to come back to the framework, where we started with that major support and link, and where we really tried to clamour on board because we thought maybe we'd be able to hold more, and then very quickly we realised that accountability came with that. And particularly if you're a CEO, accountability comes with, well, what can you actually sustainably contribute to the system? Not ephemerally contribute, so maybe you'll get some more R&D money for the short term. What can you sustainably contribute? Then, unsurprisingly for DAFRA, it comes down to grains, sheep, and then maybe whatever else we can afford. making sure that we cover off biosecurity and natural resources along the way. But even those areas do underpin the major industries in WA. So again, it's a shift from really what we want, from what we can contribute. So my summary of where we've got to with the RD&E framework is, with the backing of ministers starting in 2005, we've established the structure, we've done the structural work. R&D corporations and state agencies working with CSIRO and the universities and the like have done some functional realignment. We've done a lot of fantastic work there, but we have not yet achieved the behavioural change. It is not yet the default behaviour for people in my department and every other department like mine, for people in CSIRO and universities and elsewhere, to actually collaborate with each other, whichever organisation they're in and whichever part of this nation they live in. So, we've done some great work. The answer to my questions is simply yes and yes, but get on with it. I think we're at the end of the beginning with the new phase in Australia's agricultural R&D&E environment, and we should get on with it together. Thank you, Vic.